We are live. So before anyone else hops on here, welcome to those who are watching this on catch up. I'm very excited to be having a chat with my friend Nicky Rowbotham once more. We've had a few of these. And I am a big fan of her work and of her books. So we'll just give it a few moments. Welcome to everyone who has popped on. I'll just give Nicky a moment. Oh, my dogs are running hysterically out in the garden. I'll just give Nicky a moment to join. So if you don't have anything with you, you can quickly grab something to drink. Make yourself nice and comfortable. It's going to be about a 30-minute chat or so. These things always go over. There's Hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining. Hello, Bones. Yay.
How are you, Kathleen?
I'm so good, thank you. How are you?
So good.
We have been trying to get this conversation going for so long now. I'm so happy we're eventually here. But it's such a pleasure to work with you always, because you really lean into the trusting of the timing of things. And so me, who's sometimes all over the show, and I'll be like, oh, Nicky, I'm sorry, we've got to move it. And you're just like, it's fine, Kath, whenever.
And I think that's such an important piece. And I don't want to dive into it yet because I know you were still
dive in.
But one of the things that I've learned through experience and through working in a different way, where you try and force things and make things happen, they happen when they need to. They happen when the timing, like you couldn't have foreseen why it was the most important timing for whatever reason. And I think just having that faith and that trust in the flow of life is one of the most grounding and supportive tools that we have day to day.
Oh, 100%. I could not agree with you more. I have this conversation with myself all the time when it just comes to things like the offerings that I'm creating and what the intention is with that offering. And it really is only in like a bit of surrender, a bit of trust, a little bit of like, I don't control absolutely everything, because when I go into that mindset, it never works. Like it'll literally be like, I'll create an offering and like not one person will sign up. It's so apparent. But just a quick welcome to everyone who is here live. I'm assuming a lot of people are going to be listening to this on catch up, because it is like 11 in the morning, which Nicky and I are lucky to have time on our hands and kind of molding our own schedules during our day. But this will be live on the As It Is podcast. So I'm very excited to have you on there, Nicky. This is going to be episode 5. So it's still very much a baby, but I'm so excited to see where it grows and how it grows and how it expands. I've always said, like, one of my dreams is to be on Super Soul Sessions with Oprah, because it was one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to. And I was like, oh, imagine you could and she was my inspiration to start this podcast, because it changed my life so much. And because, I've been doing these live Instagram interviews so long, I was like, oh, that's the perfect way to marry the two together. So thank you so much for not only being here on the live, but also, it's really going to pay forward when it gets put into the podcast. And yeah, thanks everyone listening and watching. And I think I'm gonna hand over to you next. I know a lot of my audience already know you, but maybe to those who don't, a little bit about yourself, where you're from, anything you feel relevant to share.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely a person I think the way I've been coining it lately is aligning to a more soulful and soul-driven path. I chase the gold stars of the corporate arena for 20-something years as a leader there, built into businesses. And I thought there was a path there. And then it's almost like the jacket didn't fit anymore. And, I was presented with these opportunities to almost step onto this different path. And so over the last 5 years, really stepped into a more aligned way of living. And then really came through that, I needed to share my journey to help others find a more easeful path. And very quickly, I was nudged to start writing and sharing that journey. And that led to 2 books being published. And I'm actually busy on my 3rd at the moment.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
But it's very much, this is the stuff that lights me up. And it's amazing when you find that. And it's all been around, how do we find a different balance, a different flow, a more easeful frequency that we hold within our lives to actually live our true purpose ourselves. Because life wasn't meant to feel like that hamster wheel of life where we eat, sleep, pop a pill, work and repeat. But so many of us are sitting in that space and it doesn't feel authentic. But we don't know how to take those next steps. We don't know how to tune into that inner authority and really sort of go, like, what is that North Star for us? Understanding that it's going to evolve. I mean, what I thought it even looked like this time last year, and when the universe steps up and presents these opportunities, which I'll be sort of unveiling in the next few months, that's something I've been building physically, and bringing in new technologies to support people in Africa that hasn't been seen here before. And like, it was just this full body yes. And it's amazing how it just evolves and grows. But when we're in tune and we don't resist and become attached, all of a sudden, like, there's so much more that can be available there for us when we don't say I'm this thing attached to a title or a role or something we think we should do.
I love that answer because it made me think of a friend who she actually did an Instagram video the other day, and she said how it's like a trigger for her when someone says like, how are you doing, instead of asking how are you feeling. And your answer was just that, I think when you ask someone like, tell us a bit about yourself, you can very easily go into the like, where I live, what I have, what's my title, all these outward things. But as you know, as you've so beautifully shown in both your books, in the journal that you've created, it's so fascinating to me because I've spoken to quite a few women lately who come out of corporate background, who were like right up there with the CEOs. They were like in New York in the high heels, or like in Silicon Valley, or wherever it is in that world, and how women have like gone like, I'm going to go into this world and I'm going to take my seat at the table, and then sitting at the table and going, I don't actually know if I want to be at this table, like in this way, shape or form. How do I change that to look different and feel different for myself? And so I'm going to use this as a segue into one of the things that I'd love for you to talk on, is because I'm sure a lot of your clients are top tier women who are in business or working moms with kids or whatever the case might be, and having stress loads that are, I know my sister is like, she works until like 10 p.m. at night, and she's just gotten promotion on promotion on promotion. And we were talking about how with great, what's the saying? With great power comes great responsibility. Like, everyone wants the promotion, but you don't realize what that's going to entail with the workload that's going to be added to your plates. I have so many friends who are like, oh, I got this promotion, but like now I literally have no time for myself. So if you'd like to talk into that a little bit, like how that stress does affect us. I'm sure you've got a lot to share on that topic.
There's so much, but I'm going to start with something which for me I'm seeing a lot of right now, especially since it's like COVID happened. Everyone's just shoved it into the background, and then they're like, back foot on the accelerator, let's go. And I'm like, but a lot of people did a lot of soul searching. A lot of people really started to understand how they wanted to grow and feel different. And I would always say to people when they're in that situation, often when you are feeling drained, it's because you're not doing enough of what is lighting you up. It's not always that you're doing too much. It's that you're not doing resonant and aligned for you. And so I would always say to people, how do you want your life to feel? And then look at your life and how does it feel? And does it align? Because often when it doesn't feel like we want it to feel, and trust me, I am all for getting things done. I'm building businesses, making things happen, but I want to do it with ease that feels more resonant, and bringing through that balanced masculine and feminine, because often what happens when we're chasing the gold stars and we're saying, oh, I should get this promotion next, that's the next thing on the ladder, we're often chasing a path that was prescribed for us or projected onto us. But we've got to stop and have those few moments of going, does the energy behind this still feel right for me? Is this still what I want to be doing? Is this actually leading to me to a place that feels resonant for me, not looks resonant? Because again, that's often those shoulds that I say we need to consider and understand if they still serve us. Because I often just find that's that hamster wheel. We're getting ground out because we're sitting on that hamster wheel, chasing, rather than going, actually, what do I really want? What is going to light me up? What are those hell yeses for me? And it's then finding a balance that works for you. I'm not saying throw everything out and completely change your life and go live off the grid. I'm more saying bring more of that balance back in, because you often haven't made space for the things that serve you. You haven't become boundaried about your energy, because trust me, corporates, employers, workplaces, hell, your own business can be very unboundaried. It wants all of that energy, but you have to define the boundaries around what's going to serve you and work for both. And you'll often find when you hit resistance, when you start to bring those energy boundaries back into your life, that you need more of that balance. 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for those other things that create the resilience foundation within your life, rather than just doing more work. Because trust me, work is always going to be there. It is always going to be draining that energy source within you. But if you're not filling it, you're really going to end up in a situation where you're burnt out. And often where we are flat on the accelerator, especially for women who need to balance a proper, radiant, divine feminine energy with a more, what I'm going to call divine masculine energy, that's where we burn our nervous systems out, because we're not meant to operate exactly in the same way as, for example, a man does. It's very different. It's a different balance and a different flow. And what I see in most corporate environments is what I call wounded masculine. We're trying to be like a man and run, lead, direct, without really tapping into that intuition, into that more feminine, wholesome energy. And we each have our own balances. But we're not going to manage our stress if we try and run like everyone else and don't do enough of what tops us up. So I always say to people, almost just take a step back, create those moments and say, is the energy behind what I'm doing feeling resonant? What are my intentions? And how do I want life to feel? And then really understand, does your reality match that? And what tweaks do you want to make to that?
So much in all of that. And I was, as I was thinking, it's almost as if you were saying what I was thinking. Talking, I love it. What really stands out for me is that idea that as a woman, we aren't. Sorry, my dogs have just entered the room. I'm just going to put them out because otherwise they are going. 2 boys, they're going to disrupt. Come. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye. Go, Genki. The one of them has figured out how to open doors. So he knows how to open the doors. So I have to lock any door that I don't want him to come in. But to come back, so, as women thinking that we are supposed to be living in these 24-hour cycles of like, wake up, go to work, come home, do the home things, do the kid things, go to sleep, wake up, like, that is literally not how our physiology actually works. It's not how our energetics work. And it's so deeply ingrained in us because you start as a little kid. You get woken up, you go to school, you come home, you do your homework, and then you go to bed at a certain time. You eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you've been doing that for 18, potentially the average person, maybe not, don't want to generalize, but a lot of people I know, like that's what you did for the first 18 years of your life. And then you get into your 20s and then you're like, oh, okay, this is like similar but different. And then as you start, especially if you having any spiritual awakenings, if you're finding your connection, if you're finding your passions, if you're feeling into your purpose, it's like, how do I now navigate the change? That was one of the hardest things for me to do, was from working in production and waking up at like 4 a.m. with like a Red Bull and a cigarette, and then getting into my teacher training and going like, whoa, there's like a whole different way of living. Like, how do I even marry the two? How do I almost start like going over to the other side and having more of this and less of this? And I think, you know, one of the things you mention is the generating and the creating of energy in our lives, but then also the breaking down of energy in our lives. And what things, like you said earlier, like what things are doing what. And I think that's something that I speak to quite a lot. I'm running a cleanse at the moment, and it's not about going out and buying the superfoods and buying the smoothies and buying the guasha things, and it's not about adding in. First, look at what is already drawing from your life force, what is already causing toxicity or stagnation in yourself, in your body, in your life, in your relationships, in your environment. And so I think my question to you would be, I think for a lot of women who maybe haven't had that time to really get to know themselves, I've got a few friends who are like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, or how do I even start these changes? Like, I remember for me, I got my first kind of download and realized it was a download in about 2015 when I think I was 25, when I walked into the place where I went for an interview for my teacher training, and the download came and it just said, you're going to work here. This is going to be your new home. And within a month, I had quit my old job. My boyfriend at the time had broken up with me. I'd moved, and I ended up managing that studio space for 5 years. But it was my first download that I got. And I think it's because I allowed myself to go into a space of being open to receiving. So I guess my question to you would be, for someone who's maybe not sure how that works or what they could do to maybe soften or open up to receiving a few little hints and nudges and their own truth, like, you know, what are maybe some practical tools to do that?
Well, I think to your point, one of the first things we have to do is actually create that space for alignment. When we numb through busyness and just keep working and doing, thinking that'll make us successful and happy, we don't actually allow the space for that alignment to come through, for those nudges from the universe to come through. And they come through in the most random of ways. But we've often thought that busyness equals success and being valued within our lives. But again, that comes back to, are we doing the right things? So to your point, you don't have to add more. Sometimes you have to take things out to create that space. It's like decluttering your wardrobe and not immediately filling it with everything you think you should have, but allowing room for things to organically come in. And to your point earlier about energy, it's so important for people to understand that we never destroy or lose energy. We just transform and transmute it. So it's really, even if there's a stressful moment that comes in, go, actually, how do I turn this into something supportive? How do I really then tune into my energy and sort of resilience within my nervous system to create a space of, you know, that resilience, that I can move through this with a different energy rather than reacting to the stress that's coming at me. And that's why I think it's so important to have that space, so you can have that consciousness and awareness that's coming through that actually just goes like, slow down. And sometimes is as simple as slow down, have a nap, take a break. And that's why when you're having those moments, I never want people to feel through comparison or judgment or anything that they're behind, or, you know, often people go like, oh, everyone else is awakening and becoming more conscious around me, I need to do all of these things. That's when I just ask people to put their hand on their heart and just breathe and just go, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. I'm enough right now. But start to then look at how you hold those energies. You know, a lot of that masculine energy comes in the form of to-do lists and structures and routines and habits. But we can again step into that more wounded space where we create a tick box energy to start our days. Like, I have to meditate, I have to journal, I have to ground, I have to eat this smoothie, I have to do this thing. Again, that's masculine. And it can sometimes then be too overwhelming, thinking that we're doing all of the things that we should. Rather have all of these tools at your disposal and kind of wake up in the morning and go, what feels right? What do I need now? That's that feminine flow and intuition coming through. So you have the structure that can hold the space, but you're really tuning in to that more feminine energy if you are of a feminine energy. Some people are more masculine. You might have a very clear structure to start your day that says, I'm going to do some gratitude journaling, and then I'm going to go and ground outside in the sunshine, and then I'm going to allow some space for everything else to come through. So it's just finding that flow and that balance that works for you without being over prescriptive. Because I think sometimes we can get into that space of trying to do all of the things, but again, we're over cluttering our energy. Allow space for it to flow and really hold us around what you need. Because those intuitive nudges, when you reach for a banana or you reach for that, like a herbal tea, that's again being supportive. Those are those nudges coming through in the smallest of ways. But we often think it has to be massive and huge. It's often very small.
The simplest things. Quick two things on that. Number one, I actually grabbed a banana before this chat. I was like, I need something before I go into this conversation. I was like, oh, a little banana is gonna like get me ready for this.
Yes.
And the second thing was picking up on the word that you mentioned now was should. You know, should and have to. Watching our language, not only how we're having the conversations with other people, like, oh, I had to go do this, or I've got to go do, I have to go do this. But not only that, the conversation that you're having with yourself, all these ideas and beliefs that you keep planting within yourself and pushing them and driving them without it actually necessarily being true. So the word should, I think, is something, I'm in a business training now with an amazing woman called Alexia Ushard, and she does like a whole section on I should, and writing down all the things that you think you should do and actually like re-looking at that. It's quite mind-blowing. When you do reflective work on the language that you're using, not only externally, but actually the conversations you're having with yourself. And then I actually want to skip to the question that just came through from Greg. Thanks, Gregor. So glad that you're here. And all I saw was parasympathetic nervous system. And I was like, Nikki and I are hooked. That's all we need to see. So he says, question for you two legends. Loving this. I'm focusing so much on trying to engage the parasympathetic nervous system. Is it a skill that can be developed like a muscle, or is it just hardwired? Sorry, might be out of place, but heard nervous system and caught my attention regarding flow and how we get there. Gregor, you could not have asked Nikki a better question.
I was going to say, welcome to my first book, which was 7 Steps to Find Flow. And it was all a regulation of the nervous system at the base of it, with a number of other things. But before I dive into the parasympathetic nervous system and everything that entails, because it is about flow, I want to go back to your piece on the shoulds, because that's my whole thing, is unshackling from the shoulds. And do yourself a favor and count how many times you even say should during the day, because you can do an intentional exercise where you create the consciousness, but often it's that unconscious habitual use of it in our patterning, in our behavior, that when we become aware of it, man, that's when we can shift all of this. That's the magic. That's where we find the growth. And it's interesting when you hook into that word, you hear it so much around you as well. And so just diving into Greg's question, this is not something that's hardwired. I mean, I was in a state 2018, 2019, when I first started this, where if you look at my vagus nerve, I was in a state of freeze. So it felt like I was hardwired in that hyper state of fight or flight, and actually couldn't move out of it. Everything felt like an attack. But as I started to tune into regulating my nervous system and moving between the various states, because we have those states for a reason, they support us within our life. That stressed out state of fight or flight that really then helps us, sort of deliver at a high level, get things done, move out of the way of a car that's barreling towards us, or in the olden days, run away from a lion. We need that state, but we need to be able to move back into that rest and digest to support us in order to then be able to repair, regenerate, and have those moments where we can start to actually understand how stress is coming through for us. And I used a number of different modalities there that you can practice day to day. Some of them more intentional, like TRE or craniosacral therapy. And funny enough, I have an appointment later today for craniosacral, because it's a form of surrender. It's not a form of force. And we can force our nervous systems to regulate, but we actually have to allow them to regulate. Meditation, movement, and I'm not talking high intensity exercise, gentle stretching, breathing, just getting outside in the sunshine. All of these things help. And there's intentional exercises you can do every day. But part of it is tuning into that gratitude, breathing deeply, and actually allow it to feel safe. That's one of the quickest ways to regulate back into that state of safety. I do morning dances in the kitchen. It's all about those micro moments when you just say, actually, I feel safe right now, because our bodies haven't over intellectualized stress. So many people experience emails coming in, traffic jams as stressful situations, but actually they shouldn't be. But it's because we've tuned into those hyper states of fight or flight that everything feels like a lion coming at us. So it's important to incorporate those micro moments to create that space, to actually create that safety in our nervous systems and regulate back in. And if you need some additional support, and obviously this is not a medical recommendation, but ashwagandha and rhodiola are two of my favorite to really just support that calming of your nervous system. But use those moments, grounding in the sunshine, regulating with natural seasonal cycles. But the biggest thing for me is, how do we create that feeling of safety so we can sleep properly? We can tune back into real regeneration within our bodies. Just seen Greg's added another comment in here. Yeah, no, and it is a practice. I love the fact that Greg has used the word practice, because it is an ongoing practice. This is not a once-off and you're done. It's a continual regulation and practice to understand where that stress is coming. And one of my quickest ways is when I was stuck in that hyper state of fight or flight. Stress felt like it was happening right up close and personal to me over here. Everything felt like an attack. But when I was able to regulate it, it's almost like my space bubble increased. It was like coming out of the movie The Matrix. And I could see stress coming. And I could choose how I was going to react. And as soon as everything feels like that tightly clenched fist, rather than the gently unfurling hand, that's my number one signal. Let's bring in more of that regulation. And so it is really around how you just work with those moments and tune into your body and really kind of go, what's happening for me right now? Not what's happening to me, before me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you so much, Greg, for that question. I think that, all these things are so connected. We want to separate the mind from the body, from the work, from the friends, but everything is actually so connected. It's something as simple as looking at, like, say, two different friendships. You spend 5 minutes with the one person and you walk away there and you feel like you need like a 10-day nap. Or you spend 5 hours with a friend and you walk away and you feel so energized and you feel like you're flowing. So really starting to pay attention to, what are the things in my life that are affecting me in a way. I don't always like to use the words negatively and positively, because I think there's a lot of like in between. But looking at, maybe a great way is to use Nikki's words of like, what is creating energy in my life, or what is draining it, what is breaking it down. And how do I look at that? I mean, I was at a point, Greg knows my story quite well, and so do you, Nikki, with being diagnosed with bipolar about like 9 years ago. And about 2 years ago, I think it was, which is quite recent actually, my nervous system was at such a state that I had a fit that was so bad that they thought they diagnosed it as a stroke. I lost the ability to able to move. I was completely, and I was driving, but I actually had it twice, and I was driving both times that I had it. I was unable to move my body. I was unable to speak. So like someone who has a stroke who's unable to actually, I was unable to speak. I was unable to move. It was terrifying. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've had a stroke. There's something seriously wrong now. I went for the brain scans and the MRIs and the everything, and doctor to doctor, and no one could find anything on any scan or any test really around the brain. And then having to actually, kind of take a moment and go like, wow, I literally fried my nervous system to the point where my body just went no more. And I think a lot of people go through that on different levels. And so that was a very big, like a pivotal moment in my life where I had to start being like a hell of a lot more serious about what I'm allowing into my space, whether that is people, energy, food, things on my body, whatever it is, and who I'm giving access to my space. I think that's like a very, very big thing, is finding that, you know, energetic hygiene for yourself.
And I think that's so important. And first of all, like, I just love that you've shared that, because it is such a powerful moment that you went through, and it's been pivotal on your journey. And I think it's so important when we own it and we say, I'm not operating from a place of shame that this happened to me, but this happened for me. And it was just interesting, the immediate nudge that came through for me as you were mentioning that. I was like, your body had removed your ability for you to speak and to act. It was asking you to listen and surrender, and to actually tune in, because too often we treat our bodies as separate from ourselves, but they're actually part of that universal team. And I often find where we don't have alignment within our lives and we're not working with energy correctly, it's because we've disconnected from some of our pivotal foundation points. And I often talk about the wobbly stool, because we all use the intellect and the emotions, the mind and the body. And we often say like, oh, I've got that right. You know, I'm listening to all of those things. But we've then stepped away from what I call the SQ, or the soul quotient. And that's the third leg of the stool, where we bring that more sort of intuitive piece in, and we're starting to listen and bring them all together and operate from that heart space, because that's actually our most powerful muscle in the body. Our biggest magnetic field comes from the heart, not from the brain. But we often think our intellect and our logic knows better. And that's where we override our bodies and our soul sort of components coming through for us, because that's what's guiding us. And so we have to use that IQ, that EQ, and the SQ in order to ground back in. But that means we have to listen to ourselves. And that goes back to your earlier point. We need the space for that.
You need the space for that. And oh, when you say that SQ, oh, that lands so deeply for me, because in the last, I'd say probably only the last year or so of my life, I've just leaned into my intuition so deeply, and I can actually see the transformation that it is creating in my life. It is more powerful than any force that I could push to try and shift my life in a direction. And it's effortless. It's like an effortless effort. Oh, that is, yeah, I absolutely love that. And one thing I did want to say as well is that, to those listening, I had this severe panic attack while I was doing my yoga, doing breath work. Definitely wasn't perfectly, like alcohol's involved in my life, but I was doing a lot of the right things. I was living on a farm. I was walking, getting fresh air. I was like napping. I was like, you know, I was already starting to really curate my life. And one of the big reflections for me in that moment was like this feeling of like, oh, what am I doing wrong? I feel like I'm doing all the right things. Like I'm doing everything I should. I'm doing everything I should. Why is this still happening to me? And so like having that reflection to be like, if you are already putting things into place, I think it's important for people to realize, I always say, double the time to undo something that you've been doing in your life. So if you've been doing one thing for 20 years, give yourself the grace to undo it in 40. Of course, like we want to get there sooner. But if you give yourself space to undo that and go, slowly but surely, I'm going to start building little habits, and I might fall and I'll pick myself up again, because I'll have an extra little tool. I'll have an extra little block, because you aren't going to go from 0 to hero. And just because you do a yoga teacher training, or now all of a sudden go for TRE twice a week, like it's not going to glue your life together in an instant. It is a process. And then, you know, it brings me to the word grace. Like you have to have grace with yourself through these things. And that's actually going to segue me onto your book, which is called Elegant Power. I just feel like that's just such a beautiful segue into that. You described elegant power in almost one of the first pages in the book. And I would love for you to share a little bit of what that means to you and why that brought the title of the book.
Yeah. So before I go into what elegant power means, I think it's so important just to quickly touch on how so many people have confused power and force. And I think it's because of a lot of what we see in everyday life. People think that they're one and the same. But force is one of those low-grade, low-frequency emotions that we experience and have in our lives. It's literally contracting, and it's dense, and that's power over and that bullying energy. Whereas power is that lighthouse energy when you stand centered, in your own empowered energy, knowing where you're headed, what your gifts are, what your North Star is. And we start to then radiate that out from a place of ease. It's one of the higher frequency energies. And this is a lot of what I'm bringing into my third book. And it's all around frequency, resonance, and alignment. And how do we fine tune that frequency to step into our most authentic self, rather than those projected essences and identities that we bring into the world? It's such a subtle shift, but when we get that right, when we're centered in our own inner authority, that's when the game changes. And so really, elegant power is all about owning our knowing, owning that we know what's best for ourselves and that we're following that inner authority that comes through for us. And one of the analogies that I've used recently, actually with one of my coaching clients, is I said, think of like one of those, and I had it here next to me earlier, put it back on the shelf. It's the most gorgeous spiral seashell. It looks like that Fibonacci, that sacred geometry. And it's an image that's coming through for me so much at the moment. And I say to people, picture yourself standing in the midst of that. And life is going to happen around you and can feel like an energy swirl. But when you're centered, aligned in your own energy, that doesn't sway you. You're not untethered and buffeted around by what's happening in life. You're very much standing centered in your own power while life happens around you, rather than being pulled off center by everyone else's projections, needs, demand, and expectations of you. So it's so important to really create that lighthouse energy within your life, which is your elegant power. That's that radiance. And I love the quote by Anne Lamott, where she says that the lighthouse doesn't run all over the island looking for boats to save. It just stands there shining. And that for me is it personifies elegant power when we light up from within, knowing that we're enough now, that we don't have to do anything, we don't have to become anything, and we don't have to meet everyone else's expectations or follow a prescribed path in order to be enough, because we're already enough.
That is just, I think you mentioned the lighthouse saying in our previous conversation as well, and I have forgotten about that. So I am going to actually write it down after this. And I really think that people who might be drawn to listening to this conversation are people who are aware, like even Greg's last comment saying, how strong our minds can be to a point that can override our physical systems. Like, you've already got that awareness, Greg. Like, if you're listening to this conversation, you are someone, who is awake, who is seeing things for what they are. And you are most likely already a beacon of light, whether it's within your family, your home, your community, your friendships. That's really, really beautiful. And being able to, say like, I don't have to go and go outside myself. I don't have to go save anyone else to save I can just start by just glowing from the inside, like getting my own glow going. And a lot of people, I think really struggle to give themselves permission to do that for multiple reasons. And I think that will have to be like a part 2 conversation. But I did want to ask, you mentioned a lot about creating space and, creating ritual and making time to receive the information you do, to ground, to get the connections. Would you like to perhaps share some practical you know, I know you mentioned a few of these are in the book, in Finding Flow, in book number 1, but maybe, you know, personally for you, what are 2 or 3 things, practices that you do that really help you to get there? I know for me, it's 100% meditation. And it's taken me a long time to build a practice that I love. And now when I can't wait to go sit and meditate. And again, that's sitting and meditating is not for everyone. So I'd love to hear what maybe 2 or 3 of your practices are.
One of my absolute favorite ones, and this has become like a foundation for everything that I do, is getting outside and grounding in the morning light. Because first of all, it kickstarts our circadian rhythm. It literally earths you into the ground's carbon. But also when I've had a tough day, I'll sometimes do it in the afternoon as well. And I literally send any of that energy that I don't want staying with me. Or, you know, sometimes I've maybe reacted in a way that didn't feel like my best reaction. I just let that all go and I send that down into the earth. But there's something about being present in that moment, listening to the birds and just being in the moment that literally just almost, for me, completely regulates my nervous system straight away. But it's got so many other benefits because it's meditative moments. You're becoming present, you're becoming grounded, but you're also then regulating your circadian rhythm, which also helps regulate your nervous system. So for me, it's just become this little magic moment, but I'll often do a mini meditation, even if it's for 5 minutes while I'm standing outside, because meditation, again, doesn't have to be this massive practice. I love to do moving meditations where I go for a walk, just a sort of, you know, meditative track behind me and just let that play through me, because that's often where my little nudges come through. It's my moments of integration. And I love to do gratitude journaling as well. And that's one of the reasons I created the gratitude journal, because for me, gratitude, when we are grateful for what we have, we're not stepping into that energy of lack and scarcity and fear. We're just going, what I have is enough now. I'm grateful for what I have now, not that I'll be happy when I have, or I've achieved, or whatever. So it's such a simple way to bring it back and just really sort of support ourselves. And more for me, it's my sleep cycle, my sleep hygiene that I bring through. Because when I've had a phenomenal night's sleep, my body's rested and recovered. It's able to regenerate, and I've got energy for the day. So for me, sleep is just such a powerful transformative tool to support our energy throughout the day, to have that energy to do the things that light us up.
And it's so funny because I was just about to say my thing is the ocean, and Greg, you are all over this live. I love that you are invested in this conversation with us. I read that the ocean is only energy neutral place. Is that debunked based on what you said now regarding the earth and transferring that energy? Ooh, Nikki, do you have an answer to that question?
I do, and I love that question, because water cleanses your energy, salt water specifically, because actually one of the best ways to detox our bodies and clear energy is using a salt bath. The ocean is the best form of that. But if you can't get access to the ocean, having a salt bath every night, and specifically using Himalayan or Atlantic or Dead Sea salt, is the best, because that detoxes. Whereas Epsom salts, which is more magnesium sulfate, actually doesn't detox your energy, it calms your nervous system. So use what's working for you, or a combination of both. But the ground, Mother Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call her, has so much capacity from a carbon perspective to ground and hold our energy. And so anywhere that you're in nature, Shinrin-yoku is the Japanese form of forest bathing. All of that cleans your energy. So we never have to wait for perfect. We never have to wait until we're in the ocean. Take a salt bath, get grounded out in nature, like literally spend time amongst trees and animals, listen to the birds. These are all ways to regulate your nervous system. But everyone's got a different way that really relaxes them and almost regulates your nervous system. So find your moment. It can be in the mountains. It can be in your garden. It can be just listening to the birds. Someone the other day, when I was talking about grounding, she was like, Nix, go and hug the ground. Literally lie face down on the ground. I was like, I love that. My neighbors got over my neighbors seeing what I'm doing in the garden, because I just have the most fun. And someone actually said to me the other day, I've just shut my windows because it's cold and the hardy-dars are having a bit of a choral moment outside in the garden singing away. But there's generally always birds singing in my garden. And that just constantly, it's like a soundtrack that relaxes me. So the biggest thing is nature. The biggest thing is where you feel at peace. And if you don't have a bath and you've only got a shower, put some sea salts in your shower gel, or literally into your soap. Again, it helps clean your energy and actually regulate back in. It's all of these natural substances that, and it doesn't have to be anything big, massive, or expensive. It's just small intentionality. Consider the energy behind the things that you're doing. And because you can be one of those people who's, cold plunging in the ocean and doing all of the things, but if you're rushing through it, you don't pause, you don't breathe, and you don't bring the right intention to it, again, you're ticking the box on the surface of really sort of creating that consciousness for yourself. So whatever you do, do it with the right energy and the right intention, and that'll serve you.
I'm going to quote you on find your moments. Find your moments. And that really, that resonates with me for many different reasons. But one of the things that did come up for me now is when you are first getting into these practices, I think it can be very helpful to find facilitators, to find therapists, to find support systems, to find guidance, especially if you are, just getting into it, like not only so that, someone can pass over knowledge to you, but that you're supported in that bit of accountability, because the change is really hard. Like when I first started yoga, I remember I would get to the studio to go work because I managed it. And I would specifically go in jeans because I did not want to get on my mat that day. And my teacher would look at me and she'd laugh and she'd say, please go look in the lost and found and go put a pair of tights on and get your butt on your mat. And I'm so grateful, there were days where like it triggered me to actually be like super, like almost pissed off at her, but to have that accountability. But when you said find your moments, I think what's so important, because I hear this over and over again from people, is they go, oh, I went to a psychologist, it was awful. I went to a yoga class, it was awful. I think what people need to keep in mind is that not every space, not every teacher or facilitator or practitioner is going to be the right fit for you. People take an entire day to go to the mall to fit on 30 pairs of shoes to find the perfect shoe for the wedding they're going to. Yet, and you expect the first therapist you call to be the person to click with you and sort your problems out. Like, you need to take some time, call around, ask your friends, do some research, and then go into it with an open mind and open heart. And if you walk out of, there's a difference between going, oh, that person triggered me, I'm never going back there again. There's a difference between that and then really going like, I don't think that this person is going to be able to help me. And so I just wanted to state that as well, is that, looking for extra support is so important, but also be specific about the help that you look for. And it's the same within our friendships. You can't lean on every friend or every person in your life for the same things. Like, I've got one friend who's really good to support me with work things. And then I've got another friend who like I can bitch about my house problems with, or, whatever the case is that, again, it's your life. Like, create and curate, be specific, start being like mindful and having awareness of every little thing that you're bringing into your life, every person that you're bringing into your life.
Because everything in every person is energy, and it's either helping support you, or it's actually sort of pulling away from your energy and where you want to be. So I know, and listen, I could carry on talking for another 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know, it's like 46 already.
I want this to be, just like 30 to maybe 40 minutes. But I'm going to, one of my favorite concepts around this that keeps it simple for people, because that is the most important, is how we're keeping it simple, because then it's easy to implement, is think about resonance in your life. what resonates for you. What is a full body yes? What is going, oh, yes, in that heart space, rather than a, yeah, someone's told me I should, but it's not like lighting me up. And a big analogy that I'm using at the moment is think about a magnet. In any situation, are you being pulled towards it? Or actually does it feel like someone's flipped around and it's almost pushing you away? We all remember those science experiments when it starts to think about that energy in anything that you do. And, you know, often saying no is saying yes to yourself because you know it doesn't serve you. But we have to listen. And you'll get guided to the right people when the time is right for you. I know if 2 people have recommended the same person to me, that's the universe going, come, listen. This is the person you need to work with. And it will change over time. Someone that maybe supported you at the start of your journey, as you grow and evolve, maybe you need a different support. So we can't face that energy and think that I have to be, you know, only loyal to them and I can't see anyone else. We get all of these little pieces.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna end on a last little story with me playing with my intuition and trusting my inner voice. I've been literally like playing with life over the last year, playing with my intuition, and it's so fun. So just a last little story. I was driving to a retreat the other day, and I was driving alone, quite a long drive. It was about a 6-7 hour drive on my own, and driving through some of the roads where I wasn't quite sure where I was supposed to turn, know the road in general, but I had my GPS on, and the GPS was showing me this one road, and my gut said, follow the GPS. That's all you need to do, follow the GPS. The GPS is going to take you, that's the right way to go. And my head was going, no, I don't think the GPS is right. Like, if I look at the map, I like actually think that we should be taking this road. And so I put my flicker on and drive down that road. And eventually the GPS took me into a right turn onto someone's farm in the middle of nowhere. And it took me 25 minutes to drive all the way back to the point where I had turned off, because I was like, nope, not going to listen to the intuition. And I did it specifically knowing that this is probably wrong, but I just want to see if that is true. And so, you know, I do encourage, you know, everyone here, like, start to play with yourself, start to listen to yourself, start to feel, you know, like Nikki says, like, is it a full body yes? Is it a full body no? In the beginning, those signs are subtle. You might not feel them even. It might feel confusing, but the more, you know, Greg, like we were saying, it's a practice. The more you practice these things, the more they will come to you. And eventually, you know, it's like, when I go sit in a meditation, it's almost as if all the layers of self just go, zoop, it's meditation time, because I know now that that's what it is. But it takes time. Greg, I see you've got more questions. Love it. Please feel free to send Nikki a message on Instagram, or you can send me a message. Nikki, if anyone wants to contact you except for Instagram, how do they find you? Where do they find you?
They can have a look on my website, nickyrowbotham.com, or through Instagram. Those are the easiest places where I spend most of my time. So I would just either reach out through either of those. I'm always happy to help and support in various different ways. Because to your point, it's amazing how we sometimes just need something different, maybe a different perspective. And I think for me, I know that's part of my soul's mission. I'm here to help build communities, collaborate and support, and help people find their own way, follow their own North Star to really embody that lighthouse energy in their own lives.
Well, Nikki, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure everyone listening, for being such a lighthouse in this world. You know, it's really, you're so seen and you're so appreciated, and I love all the work that you're doing. I'm busy working my way through Elegant Power right now, and I feel like I need to like get through it because the 3rd book is coming out. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. That was a brilliant conversation and so many little nuggets that you've shared. Really, thank you so much for for doing this.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I think it was exactly the right time that we were supposed to connect.
As always,
Yeah.
as always. Thanks so much, Nikki. And to those watching or listening, Nikki very generously is going to be gifting in a little giveaway. I'm going to post about it this week or next week. I'll let you know. But going to be doing a giveaway of one of her latest journals. So thanks for that, Nikki. And I'm excited to see who, I've always loved giveaways. So I'm like, I want to see who wins this, because then it's just so meant for them in that moment. So I'm excited to see in whose hands the journal will fall. But other than that, keep well. Thank you so, so, so much. And I'm very excited for our next conversation. Everyone for watching here, thank you so much. Daniela, Kim, Greg, for all your input. Thank you so much. And we'll chat soon, Nikki. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
You too. Much love.
Cheers.
Bye.